Captain Ben Morris stood on the observation deck of the human transport ship New Hope as it approached the Zephyrian homeworld. The planet looked like a giant crystal ball floating in space, its surface covered in towers that sparkled and shone like diamonds. Ben had never seen anything so beautiful in his 10 years of space travel. "First time seeing Zephyr Prime?" asked Dr. Lisa Chen, the mission's cultural advisor. She joined Ben at the viewing window, her tablet full of notes about Zephyrian customs. "Yeah," Ben replied, his eyes wide with wonder. The reports didn't do it justice. "Those towers must be a mile high." 2 miles, actually, Lisa corrected. "They're grown from pure crystal using sonic frequencies. The Zephyrians don't build things the way we do. They sing them into existence." Ben shook his head in amazement. As a former mining engineer turned diplomat, he understood construction and materials, but growing buildings with sound seemed impossible. "How do they even do that?" "We're not sure exactly," Lisa admitted. "Their technology is so advanced compared to ours that our scientists are still trying to figure out the basics. That's one reason this diplomatic mission is so important. If we can establish good relations, maybe they'll share some knowledge." Their ship landed at a crystal platform that hummed with a low, pleasant tone. The landing pad itself was carved from a single piece of blue crystal that seemed to pulse with inner light. Ben felt the vibrations through his boots as the ship's engines powered down. "Remember the protocol," Lisa warned as they prepared to leave the ship. "No sudden movements, no loud noises, and definitely no shouting. The Zephyrians are extremely sensitive to sound. What sounds normal to us can be painful for them." Ben nodded and checked his diplomatic uniform one last time. He wasn't really a diplomat by training, but the Space Council needed someone who understood both engineering and alien cultures for this mission. Ben had spent 3 years on the mining colonies of Titan, working alongside various alien species, so he knew how to adapt to different customs. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Ben got his first look at the Zephyrians in person. 3 tall figures waited for them on the landing platform. They were beautiful in an otherworldly way, with pale skin that seemed almost see-through and long limbs that moved with perfect grace. Their faces were angular and sharp, with large eyes that changed color as they looked around. The leader of the Zephyrian group stepped forward and opened his mouth. Instead of words, a series of musical tones came out, rising and falling like a complicated song. The sounds were hauntingly beautiful, but Ben had no idea what they meant. Lisa quickly activated her translation device, a bulky machine that converted the Zephyrian music into human speech. After a few seconds, the device spoke in a mechanical voice, "Welcome, visitors from the third planet. I am Harmonist Kale, speaker for the Royal Court. We will escort you to the ceremony hall." Ben smiled and bowed slightly, the way Lisa had taught him. "Thank you, Harmonist Kale. I am Captain Ben Morris, and this is Dr. Lisa Chen. We are honored to be here." The translation device converted Ben's words into musical tones that sounded nothing like the beautiful music the Zephyrians produced. It reminded Ben of a broken radio trying to play a symphony. The Zephyrians' expressions didn't change, but Ben noticed their eyes flickered with what might have been amusement or pity. They walked through the Crystal City, and Ben was amazed by everything he saw. The buildings weren't just tall, they were alive with sound. Each tower hummed with its own unique frequency, creating a complex symphony that filled the air. The streets themselves were musical instruments, playing soft melodies as people walked on them. Gardens grew in perfect geometric patterns, with plants that chimed like bells when the wind touched them. "How do you stand it?" Ben whispered to Lisa as they walked. "All this noise." "It's not noise to them," Lisa whispered back. "It's communication, art, and technology all rolled into one. Try to think of it as a beautiful song instead of random sounds." Ben tried to adjust his thinking, but it was difficult. His engineering mind wanted to understand how everything worked, but the Zephyrian technology was so different from human methods that it might as well have been magic. They reached the ceremony hall, a massive dome made from crystal so clear it was almost invisible. Inside, hundreds of Zephyrians sat in perfect circles, each one humming a different note that blended with the others to create an amazing harmony. At the center of the hall stood a raised platform where the royal family waited. King Thane was the most impressive Zephyrian Ben had ever seen. He was nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that glowed with a soft silver light. His voice, when he spoke, was like a full orchestra playing at once. The translation device struggled to keep up with the complex musical patterns. "People of Zephyr Prime," the king's translated voice announced, "today we welcome the humans who have traveled far to speak with us. Though their methods of communication are simple, we will listen to their words with respect." Ben winced at the translation. He hoped the king's actual words were more diplomatic than that. Princess Vera stood beside her father, and Ben was struck by her beauty. She was smaller than the king but still tall by human standards, with hair that seemed to be made of spun silver and eyes that shifted between blue and purple as she looked around the room. When her gaze met Ben's, she tilted her head slightly in what he hoped was a greeting. The ceremony began with music that was unlike anything Ben had ever heard. The Zephyrians sang together, their voices creating patterns of sound that seemed to paint pictures in the air. Ben could almost see images forming in his mind: their planet's history, the rise of their civilization, their first contact with other species. Lisa leaned over to whisper in his ear. "This is their creation story. They're showing us how they believe their world came to be through the power of sound." Ben watched in fascination as the music continued. He began to understand why the Zephyrians thought human communication was primitive. Compared to this incredible display of sonic artistry, simple spoken words seemed clumsy and crude. After what felt like hours, the music ended and King Thane gestured for Ben to approach. Ben walked to the center of the hall, very aware that hundreds of alien eyes were watching his every move. He had prepared a speech about cooperation between their species, but now it seemed insignificant compared to the beauty he had just witnessed. "Your Majesty," Ben began, and waited for the translation device to convert his words into music. "I come representing humanity with hopes of friendship and mutual understanding between our peoples." The translated music sounded flat and boring after the Zephyrian symphony, but Ben continued. He spoke about Earth's desire to learn from the Zephyrians and to share their own knowledge in return. He talked about the benefits of trade and cultural exchange. It was a good speech, one that had been written by the best diplomats on Earth, but Ben could tell it wasn't having the effect he hoped for. The Zephyrians listened politely, but he could see in their eyes that they weren't impressed. To them, humans were probably just another primitive species with nothing interesting to offer. Then something went wrong. It started with a low rumble that Ben felt in his chest. The crystal walls of the ceremony hall began to vibrate, and the harmonic music that filled the air became chaotic and discordant. The Zephyrians looked around in alarm as their beautiful songs turned into a painful noise. "What's happening?" Ben shouted over the growing din. Harmonist Kale was speaking rapidly in his musical language, but the translation device couldn't handle the speed and complexity of the emergency communications. All Ben could make out were fragments: resonance chamber, malfunction, princess. Ben looked toward the royal platform and saw that Princess Vera was no longer standing beside her father. A section of the crystal floor had opened up, revealing a chamber below that glowed with dangerous red light. The princess must have fallen through when the floor gave way. The sound coming from the chamber was horrible, a shrieking electronic symphony that made Ben's ears hurt. The other Zephyrians were covering their ears and backing away from the opening, their faces twisted in pain. Their sensitive hearing, which allowed them to create such beautiful music, now worked against them. King Thane was giving orders, but his musical commands were almost lost in the chaos of broken harmonies filling the hall. A group of Zephyrian technicians approached the chamber opening with what looked like sonic shields, devices that projected protective sound barriers. But even with their protection, they couldn't get close to the malfunctioning equipment. Ben realized that Princess Vera was trapped down there, exposed to sound levels that would damage or destroy her sensitive hearing. Every second that passed meant more harm to her. "We need to shut down the resonance chamber," Lisa shouted to Ben over the noise. But the Zephyrians can't get close enough. Ben looked at the chamber opening and made a quick decision. His mining experience had taught him about industrial accidents and emergency procedures. More importantly, his human ears weren't as sensitive as Zephyrian hearing. What was unbearable for them might just be very unpleasant for him. "I'm going down there," he told Lisa. "Are you crazy?" she replied. "That sound could kill you." "Maybe," Ben said, "but it's definitely killing her right now." He ran toward the supply packs their team had brought and pulled out a roll of acoustic insulation material, the same stuff they used to dampen engine noise on human ships. It wasn't much, but it might give him enough protection to reach the princess. Ben quickly wrapped the insulation around his head like a makeshift helmet, leaving gaps so he could see and breathe. The Zephyrians watched him with expressions of shock and confusion as he approached the chamber opening. King Thane sang something that the translation device rendered as, "Stop, human. The harmonics will destroy you." Ben ignored the warning and lowered himself into the chamber. The sound hit him like a physical force, even through his improvised protection. His head pounded and his vision blurred, but he could still function. Years of working around heavy mining equipment had given him a tolerance for harsh industrial noise that served him well now. The chamber was larger than it had appeared from above, filled with crystal formations that vibrated and resonated with chaotic energy. At the center of the room, Princess Vera lay unconscious beside a large control panel that sparked with unstable sonic frequencies. Ben stumbled toward her, fighting against the waves of sound that seemed to push him back. The Zephyrian technology was completely alien to him, but his engineering training kicked in. He studied the control panel, looking for patterns and connections that made sense. The resonance chamber operated on principles similar to the acoustic drilling equipment he had used in the mines. Both technologies used sound waves to manipulate matter, though the Zephyrian version was far more sophisticated. The problem seemed to be a feedback loop in the harmonic generators, causing them to amplify each other instead of working in harmony. Ben located what he thought were the primary frequency controls and began making adjustments. His human understanding of wave mechanics was crude compared to Zephyrian sonic science, but sometimes simple solutions worked better than complex ones. He started shutting down generators one by one, breaking the feedback loop that was causing the malfunction. The horrible noise began to fade, replaced by a more manageable hum. Ben quickly checked on Princess Vera and found that she was breathing but still unconscious. He carefully lifted her and carried her toward the chamber opening, where Zephyrian rescue teams were now able to approach. As Ben handed the princess to her people, the last of his strength gave out. The sound exposure had taken more of a toll on his human body than he had realized. His vision went dark and he collapsed to the crystal floor of the ceremony hall. When Ben woke up, he was lying on a bed that hummed with gentle, healing frequencies. The room around him was made of soft green crystal that pulsed with soothing light. His head still ached, but the sharp pain from the chamber was gone. Dr. Lisa Chen sat in a chair beside his bed, looking relieved. "You've been unconscious for 6 hours," she said. The Zephyrian healers weren't sure how to treat human physiology, but they did their best. "The princess?" Ben asked, his voice rough from the sonic exposure. "She's fine," Lisa assured him. "Her hearing was damaged, but the healers were able to repair it. She's going to make a full recovery thanks to you." Ben tried to sit up, but Lisa pushed him gently back down. "Rest," she said. "You're something of a hero right now. The Zephyrians are calling what you did impossible. They can't believe a human was able to enter that chamber and survive, let alone fix their technology." Before Ben could respond, the door to the healing chamber opened with a soft chime. King Thane entered, followed by Princess Vera and several other members of the royal court. The king's musical voice filled the room, but instead of the complex symphonies Ben had heard before, his words were simple and direct. "Captain Morris," the translation device rendered his speech, "you have done something today that will not be forgotten. You risked your life to save my daughter, showing courage that surprises us all." Princess Vera stepped forward and spoke in her own musical language. Her voice was softer than her father's but equally beautiful. "I owe you my life, Captain Morris. Your actions have shown that humans possess qualities we did not expect." Ben tried to think of an appropriate response, but King Thane wasn't finished speaking. The king's next word sent a chill through Ben's body. "By the ancient laws of our people," King Thane announced, "any being who preserves the royal bloodline must unite with that bloodline through formal bonding. Captain Morris, you have 3 solar cycles to prepare. You will marry my daughter." Ben's mouth fell open in shock. Lisa looked just as stunned. This wasn't part of any diplomatic protocol they had studied. "Your Majesty," Ben said carefully, "I'm honored by your offer, but humans don't practice arranged marriage. I barely know the princess, and—" King Thane's musical voice cut him off. "The law is absolute, Captain Morris. You saved her life, which makes you responsible for that life. This is not a request. It is a royal command." The king turned and left the healing chamber, followed by his court. Only Princess Vera remained behind, her colorful eyes looking at Ben with an expression he couldn't read. "I apologize for my father," she said through the translator. "Our laws are very old and not easily changed. But perhaps we can find a way to make this situation acceptable for both of us." With those cryptic words, the princess left Ben alone with Lisa and the growing realization that his simple diplomatic mission had become far more complicated than anyone had expected. Ben stared at the crystal ceiling above his bed and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had come to Zephyr Prime to establish peaceful relations between humans and Zephyrians. Instead, he was about to become part of the royal family whether he wanted to or not. The gentle humming of the healing chamber continued around him, but Ben found no comfort in the soothing sounds. In 3 days, his life would change forever, and he had no idea what to expect. Ben spent the next morning pacing around his guest quarters, trying to think of a way out of his situation. The crystal walls hummed with peaceful melodies, but Ben felt anything but peaceful. He was supposed to marry an alien princess he had known for less than a day, and nobody seemed to think this was unusual. Dr. Lisa Chen arrived with breakfast and a stack of research tablets. "I've been studying Zephyrian marriage customs all night," she said, setting down a tray of strange fruits that chimed softly when touched. "The good news is that their bonding ceremonies aren't exactly like human weddings." "What's the bad news?" Ben asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "The bad news is that the king wasn't exaggerating about the ancient law. According to these records, it's been enforced for over 2,000 years. Anyone who saves royal blood becomes part of the royal family. No exceptions." Ben sat down heavily on the crystal chair that adjusted itself to his human proportions. "There has to be a way around this. What if I just leave the planet?" "That would cause a diplomatic disaster," Lisa warned. "The Zephyrians would see it as an insult to their most sacred traditions. We'd lose any chance of forming an alliance with them." Ben rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. "So my choices are marry the princess or destroy human-Zephyrian relations forever?" "Pretty much," Lisa said sympathetically. Before Ben could respond, a gentle chime announced a visitor. The door opened to reveal Princess Vera, but she looked different than she had in the ceremony hall. Instead of formal royal robes, she wore a simple tunic that sparkled with tiny crystal threads. Her silver hair was pulled back in a practical style, and she carried a small device that looked like a more advanced version of the translation equipment. "Captain Morris," she said, her musical voice immediately converted by the device, "may I speak with you privately?" Lisa gathered her tablets and left the room, giving Ben an encouraging nod as she went. Ben stood awkwardly, not sure of the proper protocol for talking to alien royalty who was supposed to become his wife. "Please sit," Princess Vera said, settling into a chair that grew from the floor to accommodate her. "I know this situation is difficult for you. It's not exactly what I expected either." Ben was surprised by her directness. "You don't want to get married either?" "I want to get married someday," Vera replied, "but I always assumed it would be to someone I chose, someone I loved. Our law is meant to honor those who serve the royal family, but it was written in a time when such marriages were political alliances between Zephyrian noble houses. So what do we do? Ben asked. Your father seemed pretty determined about this. Vera leaned forward, her eyes shifting to a deep blue color. I have been studying human customs since your people first made contact with us. I know that humans value choice in marriage, and that forced unions often fail. I don't want either of us to be miserable. Ben felt a spark of hope. Do you have an idea? Perhaps, Vera said. Our law requires bonding, but it doesn't specify what kind of bonding. I could propose to my father that we undergo a trial bonding for one solar cycle. This would satisfy the ancient requirement while giving us time to truly know each other. And after the year? Ben asked. If we find that we are compatible, we can choose to make the bond permanent. If not, the trial period allows for dissolution without dishonor to either family. Ben considered this. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than being forced into immediate marriage. Would your father agree to this? He might, Vera said. Especially if I present it as a way to strengthen the bond by allowing it to develop naturally. Zephyrians value harmony above all else, and a forced relationship rarely achieves true harmony. Ben nodded. Okay, let's try it. But I want to be clear about something. If we do this trial bonding, I want us to be honest with each other. I don't want to spend a year pretending to feelings I don't have. Vera's eyes shifted to a warmer purple color. I appreciate your honesty, Captain Morris. I feel the same way. Perhaps we should start by trying to be friends. Call me Ben, he said, offering his hand in a human gesture of greeting. And I'd like to learn more about you and your world. Vera looked at his extended hand curiously, then reached out to touch it with her own. Her skin was cooler than human skin but not unpleasantly so. I would like to learn about your world as well, Ben. The conversation with King Thane went better than Ben had expected. When Princess Vera presented her idea for a trial bonding, the king listened carefully to her musical arguments. Ben couldn't understand the complex harmonies they used, but he could hear the respect in their tones as they discussed the proposal. Finally, King Thane turned to Ben. My daughter speaks wisdom, the translation device rendered his words. A bond that grows naturally will be stronger than one forced by law. You have one solar cycle to determine if you are truly compatible. The trial bonding ceremony will take place tomorrow. Ben felt relief wash over him. It wasn't complete freedom, but it was a chance to make his own choice about his future. The trial bonding ceremony was smaller than the grand celebration Ben had been dreading. Only the immediate royal family and a few close advisors attended. Ben wore formal human clothes while Vera was dressed in robes that chimed softly as she moved. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Vera sang a complex melody that the translation device explained was a song of partnership and mutual respect. Ben recited vows that had been written to honor both human and Zephyrian traditions. They exchanged crystal bands that would change color based on their emotional connection, a Zephyrian custom that made Ben nervous but seemed important to Vera. When it was over, they were officially bonded but not yet married. Ben found himself wearing a ring that currently glowed a soft amber color, which Vera explained meant cautious friendship. What color would indicate love? Ben asked curiously. Deep blue, Vera replied, showing him her own ring, which matched his amber glow. But such bonds take time to develop. We have a full cycle to learn about each other. Their shared living quarters in the royal palace were more comfortable than Ben had expected. The Zephyrians had studied human needs and created a space that accommodated both species. One section was filled with the harmonic crystals Vera needed for her daily meditations, while another area had been designed with human furniture and Earth-normal lighting. Ben's favorite part was the workshop where they began spending most of their time together. Vera had suggested they work on joint projects to better understand each other's methods of problem-solving. It turned out to be a brilliant idea. Their first project was improving the translation devices that allowed humans and Zephyrians to communicate. Ben's practical engineering approach combined surprisingly well with Vera's sophisticated understanding of harmonic frequencies. Working together, they developed a system that could translate not just words but emotional undertones, making conversations between the species much more natural. "Your people think very directly," Vera observed one day as they tested their improved translator. "Zephyrians often communicate in layers of meaning, but humans say exactly what they intend." "Is that good or bad?" Ben asked, calibrating a frequency modulator. "Neither," Vera said, her eyes shifting to a thoughtful green. "It's different. Sometimes direct communication is more effective than our elaborate harmonies." Ben was learning to read Vera's eye colors, which changed based on her emotions and thoughts. Green meant she was curious or thinking deeply, blue indicated happiness or contentment, purple showed interest or excitement, and amber meant she was being cautious or uncertain. As the weeks passed, Ben found himself looking forward to their daily work sessions. Vera was incredibly intelligent and had a way of explaining complex Zephyrian science that made it understandable to his human mind. She was also funny, though her humor was more subtle than what Ben was used to. "Why do humans tell jokes that aren't true?" she asked one day after Ben had shared a few Earth jokes with her. "Because they're funny," Ben replied, then realized that wasn't a very helpful explanation. Humor helps humans deal with difficult situations. "We laugh at absurd things because it makes us feel better." "Interesting," Vera said. "Zephyrians create humor through harmonic combinations that create pleasant sound patterns. Your method is more about meaning than sound." "Show me," Ben said, curious about Zephyrian humor. Vera sang a short musical phrase that made Ben's translation device produce gibberish. But there was something about the rhythm and tone that made Ben smile even though he didn't understand the words. "How did you do that?" he asked. "The melody itself creates a feeling of lightness and joy," Vera explained. "Your brain responds to the harmonic patterns even when your conscious mind doesn't understand them." Ben was fascinated. "Could we use that principle in our communication work? Maybe create translation software that includes emotional harmonics?" Vera's eyes brightened to an excited purple. "That's a wonderful idea. Imagine if humans and Zephyrians could share not just words but feelings through sound." They spent the next month developing what they called the empathy translator. The device could convert human emotional expressions into Zephyrian harmonic patterns and vice versa. When they demonstrated it to the royal court, the response was enthusiastic. King Thane himself tested the device, speaking to Ben in pure Zephyrian harmonics that conveyed not just meaning but the king's feelings of gratitude and respect for Ben's rescue of his daughter. Ben felt the emotions as much as heard the words, creating a connection between them that simple translation had never achieved. "This could change everything," Lisa told Ben after the demonstration. "If we can help humans and Zephyrians understand each other emotionally, it would revolutionize diplomatic relations." Ben nodded, but his thoughts were more focused on Vera than on diplomacy. Somewhere during their months of working together, his feelings toward her had begun to change. She was no longer just an alien princess he was temporarily bonded to. She had become someone he genuinely cared about. He started noticing little things about her, the way her eyes sparkled when she was excited about a new discovery, how she hummed softly while she worked, the gentle way she treated everyone around her regardless of their status. More importantly, he began to see how much she had changed her life to accommodate him. Vera had learned to speak some basic human words without the translator, practicing for hours to get the pronunciation right. She had studied Earth culture extensively, asking thoughtful questions about human customs and beliefs. She had even convinced the royal kitchens to prepare human-style food for their meals together. "Why are you doing all this?" Ben asked her one evening as they shared dinner in their quarters. "Learning human customs, changing your routine, adjusting to my way of doing things." Vera looked surprised by the question. "Because I want to understand you," she said simply. "How can we build a true partnership if I don't know who you really are?" Ben felt something shift inside his chest. He looked down at his bonding ring and was surprised to see that the amber glow had deepened to a warm orange. Vera noticed too and smiled. Orange means growing affection, she said softly. My ring changed color weeks ago, but I didn't want to say anything until you were ready. Ben looked at her ring and saw it glowing the same orange as his own. When did you start feeling differently about this arrangement? The day you asked me why I was learning human customs, Vera admitted. Most people in my position would have expected you to adapt to Zephyrian ways entirely. But you seem genuinely interested in compromise and mutual understanding. Their relationship continued to deepen as they worked on more projects together. They developed new communication protocols for human-Zephyrian trade negotiations, created hybrid technologies that combined the best of both species' innovations, and even collaborated on cultural exchange programs that would help both societies learn from each other. Ben found himself staying up late just to talk with Vera about everything from Zephyrian philosophy to human literature. She was endlessly curious about Earth, asking detailed questions about everything from human art to the way human families worked. Do human parents really let their children choose their own life paths? She asked one night. Most of the time, Ben said. Why, is it different here? Very different, Vera replied. Zephyrian children are usually guided into roles that match their harmonic abilities. I was trained from birth to be a princess and potential ruler. I never had the chance to explore other possibilities. What would you have chosen to do? Ben asked. Vera's eyes shifted to a wistful blue. I think I would have liked to be an explorer, studying other worlds and species. I've always been fascinated by the diversity of life in the universe. Ben smiled. Maybe when our bonding year is up, we could explore together. Earth Space Council is always looking for qualified expedition leaders. Would you want me to come with you? Vera asked, her voice hopeful. I can't imagine exploring the universe without you, Ben said, and realized he meant it completely. As their year together neared its end, Ben found himself dreading the decision they would have to make. The orange glow of their bonding rings had gradually shifted to a deep blue, indicating love and deep emotional connection. But Ben worried that Vera might feel obligated to choose permanent bonding because of her royal duties. 2 weeks before their decision deadline, Ben decided to address his concerns directly. Vera, he said as they worked together in their laboratory, I want you to know that when we make our choice about the permanent bonding, I want you to choose what will make you happiest. Don't worry about political consequences or what your father expects. Vera stopped working and looked at him with surprise. Ben, do you think I would choose to bond with you permanently out of duty? I don't know, Ben admitted. You're a princess with responsibilities to your people. Maybe staying bonded to me isn't what's best for Zephyr Prime. Vera laughed, a sound like silver bells chiming. Oh Ben, you still don't understand. Our work together has already changed Zephyrian society. The technologies we've developed, the cultural exchanges we've initiated, the new understanding between our species, all of this has made Zephyr Prime stronger and more connected to the galaxy. She moved closer to him, her eyes glowing bright blue. But more than that, I love you. Not because of duty or politics or ancient laws. I love your curiosity, your kindness, your willingness to risk everything to help someone in need. I love the way you see solutions that others miss, and the way you make me laugh with your strange human jokes. Ben felt his heart racing. I love you too, he said. I think I started falling for you the day you asked me to call you by your name instead of your title. They stood together in their laboratory, surrounded by the fruits of their collaboration, and Ben realized that the ancient Zephyrian law had given them something neither had expected, not just a political alliance, but a true partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. When they appeared before King Thane to announce their decision, their bonding rings glowed with the deep blue light that indicated permanent love and commitment. The king smiled and sang a complex harmony that their improved translator rendered as joy, satisfaction, and hope for the future. Their wedding ceremony was the first interspecies royal wedding in Zephyrian history. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, celebrating not just the union of Ben and Vera but the new era of cooperation their partnership represented. Ben stood beside Vera as they exchanged permanent bonding vows, listening to her sing the ancient Zephyrian songs of commitment while he spoke human promises of love and loyalty. The ceremony combined traditions from both cultures, creating something entirely new yet deeply meaningful to both species. As they were declared permanently bonded, Ben reflected on the strange path that had brought him to this moment. He had come to Zephyr Prime as a reluctant diplomat, hoping to establish basic trade relations. Instead, he had found love, partnership, and a new purpose in life. Looking at Vera, who was glowing with happiness as her people celebrated around them, Ben realized that sometimes the most unexpected unions create the most beautiful harmonies. Their marriage wasn't just the joining of two individuals, but the beginning of a new kind of relationship between humans and Zephyrians, one based on understanding, respect, and the kind of love that grows when two different worlds choose to create something wonderful together. The celebration continued long into the night, filled with music that blended human and Zephyrian styles, creating melodies that neither species could have produced alone. It was a perfect symbol of what Ben and Vera had accomplished together, proof that differences in background and culture weren't obstacles to overcome, but strengths to be celebrated and shared.